Welcome to Alaska Weather, a production of Alaska Public Media and the National Weather Service, Alaska Region. Produced and broadcast daily from the studios of KAKM, Alaska Weather provides complete forecasts, public, marine, and aviation for all of Alaska. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
Indie Alaska is an innovative weekly web series capturing the diverse and colorful lifestyle of Alaskans. Real stories of everyday Alaskans at work and play. Supported in part by Alyeska Pipeline Service Company.
The National Weather Service.
Good Monday, everyone. I'm meteorologist Dave Snider with the National Weather Service. It is the 14th of April. As always, we encourage you to stay up to date with the latest weather in your part of Alaska by going to weather.gov/Alaska or arh.noaa.gov. It'll take you to the same place. The weather info line is open at 800-472-0391. Find each Weather Service office on Twitter, on Facebook, now at NWS Alaska. If you use that in your search bar, it just got a little bit easier. And on YouTube, search for NWS Anchorage, and you'll get your daily afternoon map briefings about 3:45, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then after this show, you can find the complete version of Alaska Weather on our partner station's YouTube channel. If you search for AKWX TV on YouTube or go to alaskapublic.org, you can find the complete broadcast later on in the evening in case you're out to sea just a little bit too long. Here's a look at the flood potential created by the Alaska Pacific River Forecast Center. This was as of last Friday. And across the north, the coastal plain all the way out into Kotzebue Sound, you'll notice a below or above average flood potential there. Below average expected across south central and southwestern Alaska. And right now, all the villages along the main branches of the rivers are all looking at flood potential that is low to low or moderate there. So no major danger at this point there. And again, this is the latest as of Friday afternoon. As we're moving into breakup season, of course, you can check their forecast for their breakup map that will be updated sometimes several times during the day with the chart that you see here. Again, the map will be updated as river conditions are reported there. So it's really up to folks like you along the rivers that are giving that information to your officials there in each village and passing that information along so the River Forecast Center can update the map for everybody. So if you're right here along the Yukon, very important that you folks in Galena or anywhere are working with the River Watch groups to pass on that river information there. So this is the latest as of April 11th. We do have most areas that are mostly ice as far as we know right now. So a change is coming though. Already we've got sea ice that is breaking up across Bristol Bay and around Kuskokwim Bay. We'll talk about that coming up a little bit more when we get to our marine weather. Here's a look at the satellite picture across Alaska, and you can notice a couple pretty easy to pick out features here. A wave of low pressure working its way into the interior. With that, a stream of moisture working up against southeast brought some light rainfall to many areas up and down southeast today. Pockets of cloud cover working across the interior, also with some snow as you get up around Bettles today. Saw a little bit of snow in that area. And low pressure south of the Alaska Peninsula and the eastern Aleutians, bringing some breezes through the region. Most of the precipitation just passing by St. George. Didn't look like a whole lot fell at St. Paul by late afternoon. A lot of that had at least stopped for a time. And we'll probably get some more showers across southwestern Alaska as we did earlier today. A new storm coming in from south and west. Looks like that'll graze the central parts of the Aleutians. Let's use the visible satellite picture for this, and you'll be able to see some different details. Considerably fewer clouds across the Bering Sea there and much drier weather south of the chain. This wave will probably bring some gales tonight across the central and southern sections of the Aleutians there, especially around Adak and Atka. Not a whole lot of moisture wrapped up in it, so this is going to mainly be a stronger breeze than what you've been dealing with today. The winds should pick up a little bit more tonight and tomorrow, and the gales, again, mainly focusing on the Pacific side of the chain as the storm eventually moves into the southern Bering Sea. For most other areas, fairly dry weather will continue for south central, at least for the next day or so. It looks like the weather map shows high pressure is in command now of a good chunk of the interior. at 1,016 millibars. It's really been breaking up quite a bit of the moisture pattern across the region with frontal boundary located across the southern Gulf. This is working that rainfall up against southeast. That will continue as we head into tonight and tomorrow. We've got our low pressure pattern out across the central and western chain around 984 millibars. It's already stretching out and losing its frontal characteristics there. We did see a few snow showers around St. George. Some light rainfall up around Kotzebue Sound region, so warm air working its way very quickly up the western coastline. By tonight, rain and snow showers possible around southeast, though most of the low-lying areas where most of the villages and communities are will be dealing with rain more than anything else. Some pockets of rain and snow showers around the northern Gulf Coast, as well as areas around Cordova. Probably up around some of the higher terrain there in south central, and low pressure across the southern Bering Sea at 986 millibars will continue the threat for some gales again tonight, mainly on the Pacific side of the central chain. Across areas a little bit further west in the western parts of the Bering Sea around Anadyr, we've seen a lot of wind and snow there. That will be mainly confined to the northern section of the storm, so it doesn't look like this is just going to wrap into western Alaska anytime soon. In fact, Nome should be looking at improving weather as we get into the next couple days. Snow showers across the Chukchi Seacoast will mainly be limited to areas around Kotzebue Sound and east, while Nome should see a little more sunshine as we go. More clouds for the interior, some spot rain showers by day, maybe some snow mixed in during the morning hours, but after about mid-morning that should quickly turn over to light rainfall. Southeast, you're looking at primarily rain tomorrow afternoon, and another wave across the Gulf of Alaska organizes a little bit better. We'll get a little bit more of a surge of warmer air working up across the eastern part of the Gulf. Low pressure out across the Bering, just kind of spreading out. So that frontal boundary where we had more of a sharp contrast of a wind shift and a temperature change, and a pressure drop for that matter, is kind of filling in. So instead of one big solid change of weather moving across the west, we now have kind of a diffuse circulation that has a lot of things wrapped up into it. So no major frontal boundary swinging through. Instead, pockets of rain and rain mixed with snow, even some snow across the northern part of the storm will be found, but mainly look for some gusty winds across the central chain. Some spotty rain showers and snow showers for that matter across the Bering, and occasionally we're going to see the western parts and southwestern parts of Alaska dealing with a better chance of precipitation than really anywhere else across the mainland. For southeast, you're still looking at rainfall, as I mentioned. That continues as we head into Wednesday, and as low pressure tightens up a little bit more in the Gulf, 999 millibars, you're probably going to get some more wind with this as well. Areas of rain and snow will mix on Wednesday, a better chance for communities in south central along the Kenai Peninsula from Kodiak, Homer, all the way into the Cook Inlet. They're looking at a better chance of precipitation. Again, that will be rain mixed with snow with no major accumulations anywhere, it seems like. Snow showers across parts of the interior, including areas in the mid and upper Yukon, and also across the Beaufort Seacoast now. Places like Kaktovik and maybe Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse looking at some snow showers. And low pressure still dawdling out in the southern parts of the Bering, south and west of the Pribilovs and north of Adak and Atka at 997 millibars, with continued threats for rain and snow showers there along the chain and the west coast. Here's a look at temperatures today. If you thought it was warm, you're probably right. Temps in most areas in southeast were in the 40s and 50s. Hyder made it up to about 50 degrees. Petersburg was close to 52. Most of coastal areas in southeast were looking at temperatures at least in the low to mid 40s. Annette and Ketchikan saw some rainfall and temps easily in the mid 40s there. Haines up to 48 degrees. South central 40s and 50s there. Valdez was struggling into the lower 40s after we sent the map over today, so that was probably low 40s by late afternoon. It was still kind of a cool compared to everywhere else. 40s for Kodiak, around 50 in King Salmon today. Looking farther northward, 40s for most areas in the interior. As you get up toward Talkeetna, 47 there, 43 in Northway, 51 in Eagle, 49 in Fairbanks, not too bad at all in Fort Yukon at 46, 30 in Arctic Village, and 32 for Anaktuvik Pass. Most of the coastal plain saw temps that were fairly close to freezing, especially from Prudhoe Bay eastward toward Kaktovik. A cold start there this morning, temperatures still in the single digits. In Kotzebue Sound, looking at temps that were above freezing. In Shishmaref, 34 degrees, while Nome was 33 by late afternoon. Unalakleet at 40 degrees, 45 in McGrath. Galena was showing 42. Bethel, 41 degrees after periods of rain today. And 30s, 40s, and 50s around the southwest coast, around Dillingham. It was 43 degrees. Upper 30s for the Pribilovs, the Alaska Peninsula, in the 30s and 40s today. Sandpoint about 41. Adak, Atka, both in the lower 40s, and Attu and Shemya showing 37. Overnight low temperatures will stay above freezing for most areas in the chain. St. Paul about 35, 31 on Nunivak Island. And this warmth is having, again, a pretty big effect on the ice. We'll talk about that again in just a few minutes. That's 2 teases now in less than 5 minutes if you can handle that. 28 degrees in Unalakleet, 25 overnight in Nome. Single-digit temps again for the coastal plain. Teens for Fort Yukon, 5 for Arctic Village. Teens and 20s for most of the interior, including Fairbanks at 22. Tanana looking at closer to 20. 20s and 30s for South Central. Areas around Prince William Sound probably straddling the freezing point, with Southeast looking at temperatures at or above freezing in most areas except for Gustavus and maybe Yakutat. A little bit cooler there. Annette and Ketchikan closer to 40. High temperatures tomorrow should remain a little bit on the cool side north of the Brooks Range. Probably single digits and teens there. Barrow looking at 18. Around the Yukon Valley, temps will easily warm into the low to mid 40s. In fact, some places like Bethel could approach 50 degrees. Around the Susitna Valley, temperatures will likely make it into the mid 40s, with south central areas looking at mid 40s along the Kenai Peninsula. Prince William Sound not too far behind. Kodiak 43, low to mid 40s for the Alaska Peninsula. Around 40 degrees from the central to western Aleutians. The Pribilofs upper 30s. Southeast closer to 50 degrees. The spring warm up is coming fast. Flying weather now shows MVFR conditions all across the Gulf and southeast tomorrow, expecting more rainfall there. IFR conditions across the western parts of Prince William Sound and the eastern Kenai Peninsula, from Cape Newenham all the way up toward Nunivak Island, St. Matthew, the Pribilofs, and out toward the eastern side of Russia, looking for IFR conditions and MVFR for most of the chain and the western side of the Brooks Range, as well as the Chukchi Seacoast and parts of Kotzebue Sound. Here are your past conditions. Good news, though, is even with the clouds spreading in, most areas are going to be looking at VFR passes, probably for Anaktuvik and Adigan Pass tomorrow. For Lake Clark and Merrill Pass, we expect some clouds and maybe some showers in the region by the afternoon, but chances are it's going to be VFR through most of the day. Rainy Pass should also be VFR through most of your Tuesday. Windy Pass, we expect to see VFR. Isabel Pass should be visual flight rule as your Tuesday goes on. Teneda Pass may be a little bit lower visibility in that area as a wave is still working across the eastern part of the interior. Teneda Pass, then we expect to see MVFR conditions by late afternoon. The eastern side of Porter's Pass, or the western side of Prince William Sound, closer to Whittier, likely dealing with MVFR through a good part of the day, though most of the pass and the western side should be VFR. And Chilkoot and White Pass, we expect to see limited to MVFR conditions or above. Freezing levels shows that warm and wet air kind of diffuse across the Gulf, anywhere from 2 to 4, maybe even 6,000 feet well south, a little bit closer to the Pacific Northwest. The surface freezing line hasn't budged too much across the northern Gulf just yet, but you can see some of the changes here across the southern Bering. Here's your third tease now about ice conditions. The surface freezing line is having a huge impact on ice conditions there across the Kuskokwim Delta and into Bristol Bay. You can also see that 32-degree line working its way closer and closer to the western Bering, so a lot of changes happening quickly. Icing potential below 10,000 feet in most areas, above 4,000 feet across the northern Gulf Coast into areas in southwestern Alaska. A little bit lower out across the Bering, but really we're only looking at light to isolated moderate potential for icing, and across the central Aleutians that could be as high as 4,000 feet to as low as 8,000 feet. So watch for some of that as we go. Jet stream shows our trough of low pressure that's going to sit across the central and western Bering probably for the next 3 to 4 days there. It just looks like it sits here and hovers, and that's going to slosh in some waves of storm energy into the southeastern parts of Alaska. A ridge sitting across the western sections of Canada will keep things pretty stable across a large part of Alaska, but it is going to allow in the next disturbance perhaps by Tuesday night into Wednesday for south central and keep active and wet weather moving into western sections of Alaska. So a little bit of protection from that high pressure ridge aloft, but not complete protection. And this is not a blocking pattern right now. As we get into 9,000 feet, you'll notice that strong southerly flow working up the west coast. You know what that's doing. I'm not going to say anything more about the ice just yet. A northwesterly flow running down the Aleutians, 30 to 35 knots. More of a southwesterly flow coming into the southern parts of southeast. And here's our ridge of high pressure trying to slow down the speeds and trying to stabilize the pattern. Right now you're looking at 20 to 25 knots or so across the central and the east. At 3,000 feet, still got our broad southerly flow coming up the west coast and through the Bering Strait. Stronger winds around St. Matthew, the Pribilofs, and the eastern chain up to 50 knots or so at this level. Light southerly flow coming across the Gulf. More of a boundary wind here at 15 knots or so, kind of running parallel to the coast all the way from the northern entrances through Yakutat and the Prince William Sound region into Homer and Seward. And then light southerly flow coming in across a large part of southeast, really slowing down once it hits the mainland. Again, this is 3,000 feet. Your turbulence potential, then most areas looking at light, maybe some isolated chop around the Bering Strait that could reach occasional moderate in some areas. Below 4,000 feet around Nunivak Island out to St. Matthew across the eastern chain and the southern tip of the Alaska Peninsula, generally below 4,000 feet. Anywhere else it doesn't look like you're going to experience anything very broad or long lasting. Most of that will be surrounding frontal boundary structures or what's left of them, and again some of the faster moving winds there across southwest Alaska and the eastern Bering Sea. That's a look at your aviation forecast. We'll be back in just a few minutes with a look at that ice edge, of course, and the rest of your marine weather. Stay tuned.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Mary O'Connor with the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation, and I also manage the Aviation Safety Program with the National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health here in Anchorage. This evening, we are very happy to have as our guest Harold Townsend. He's a pilot for one of the airlines in Alaska. He is also a PhD candidate and has been studying to receive his PhD in aviation from Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University. Welcome, Harold.
Thank you, Mary.
You've spent a fair amount of time in school. Can you tell us about the types of programs that Embry-Riddle offers?
Sure. Embry-Riddle, they offer many different degree programs, associates, bachelors, masters, and just recently, beginning in April 2010, they started a PhD program, one of the first PhD programs in the nation. Excuse me. It's a great program. They offer the PhD program is mostly offered online. They have two main campuses in Prescott, Arizona and in Daytona Beach, Florida, where they offer their bachelor's and their master's degrees. In addition, they have extended campuses worldwide, and they offer courses online, which the PhD program is mostly offered online with 3 residencies in Daytona Beach.
So by residency, you mean you go to Daytona Beach for a certain amount of time, but you're still allowed to take most of your coursework online?
That is correct. There's 3 semesters in a year, and the residencies occur in August. We go down there for a week and meet with other students, other colleagues, and we present, we have seminars. It's a great time to meet with others in the program. And the students, it's an excellent group of students. There are others that have a great passion for aviation and very well accomplished. It's easy, it's a great learning experience for all of us.
So by being able to take your coursework online, have you been able to stay in Anchorage and work during this time?
I have, and that's one of the reasons why I chose Embry-Riddle's program. It allows me to continue to work and stay up here in the state. While I would probably prefer to go to a campus, it didn't work out to, especially in the aviation industry, step out of the seniority list. It doesn't work very well. But one of the things they do encourage is they ask, how will you simplify your life in order to fit the PhD program in? And at the time I was flying part-time and I held a position in finance, and I had to drop the finance position just to make time for the PhD program.
So why did you choose Embry-Riddle for your PhD?
I was familiar with the bachelor program and the excellent education that they offer, and I also wanted a degree in aviation. At the time, they were the only university to offer a airline or aviation specific PhD. Since then, University of North Dakota, I believe, has began a program, but most professors prior to that, if they wanted a PhD in aviation, they had to either begin a PhD program in such as education and then tailor their dissertation towards aviation topic.
So what are you going to do with a PhD in aviation? You mentioned that you're a flying pilot. Are you going to continue to fly, or do you think you'll move into a teaching position?
Well, I enjoy flying, and actually one of the captains I used to fly with told me I could really make something of myself if I didn't like to fly so much. But so I don't know where I'll use this eventually, but it's right now the focus is to finish the program, and hopefully I'll be defending the dissertation in 3 to 4 months.
And how long has it taken you from start to finish with the PhD?
Well, there's this 7-year window it must be completed in, and the coursework going full-time, which is 2 courses a semester, it took me 2 years to finish that. and now I've been in the dissertation phase for just over a year.
That's pretty impressive.
It is. Plenty of time. It's a lot of time. Spend all day flying or working in the office and then come home and working on the dissertation with kids crawling all over me. So,
Wow. If a person were interested in learning more about the program, how would they find out about Embry-Riddle and the PhD in Aviation program?
well, I would recommend they can either search for Embry-Riddle on the webs online or visit the link that's shown on the screen.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Sure.
We appreciate you being here, and we'll look forward to hearing more about your specific research on our next program.
Excellent. Thanks, Mary.
Harold's love for aviation is very motivational. My favorite flight instructor used to say that we are all students and that a good pilot is always learning. If you enjoy learning about events and happenings in aviation in Alaska, please consider becoming a member of the Alaskan Aviation Safety Foundation. Your support helps us bring you news, information, and inspirational features like Harold's Quest for Education. Ladies and gentlemen, please tune in to our next show when we talk to Harold about the research he's doing and his studies with his PhD. Until next time, keep learning.
Thanks for staying with us. Here's a look at your marine forecast, starting with the sea ice edge. Look at all the ice that is not across southwestern Alaska's coastline anymore or in Bristol Bay. A lot of open water opening up even more, mainly south of Nunivak Island. There are still some strips and ice areas in the Bristol Bay region. Well, I think Bristol Bay is mostly clear. Let me say that again. Around the Kuskokwim Bay area, there's still some ice areas lingering close to the coastline and offshore, but a lot of this is receding and quickly. A lot of this happened just over the weekend. So if you looked at this Friday, this is a little bit different today. You can always get the latest information from our sea ice experts around Alaska at weather.gov/anchorage/ice.php. And as of today, this is the last update for the Cook Inlet ice area. There's still some spots of ice there, but most of it is breaking up and quick. So that is a look at today's sea ice edge with major improvements across southwestern Alaska's coastline and in the eastern Bering Sea. On to the marine forecast now for southeastern Alaska. You'll notice the winds relatively light across the inner waterways, 10 to 15 knots, a northerly flow in Lynn Canal. Offshore winds from Yakutat down to the northern entrances around 15 knots with a 7-foot sea. Excuse me, I'm getting all choked up. The weather's way too nice. A southwesterly flow from Sitka down to the Dixon entrances around 7 to 8 feet. That is Tuesday. Here's on to Wednesday. An easterly flow there from Yakutat down toward the northern entrances around 35 knots. A southeasterly flow coming up from Craig. And look for that light southeasterly wind across the inner waterways around 30 knots. 6-foot seas there. More of a northeasterly flow around 20 knots with 4-foot seas. And southerly winds taking over the Lynn Canal around 15 knots with a 3-foot sea. Around south central Tuesday, you'll notice more of a north and easterly flow wrapping around that broad area of low pressure that's a little bit closer to southeastern Alaska. Easterly winds south of Cordova and outside of Prince William Sound. Northeasterlies coming down from Seward, and 20-knot winds blowing into the Barren Islands, 15 knots inside of Cook Inlet. Only around 10 to 15 knots at their strongest, it looks like. With 3-foot seas there west of the Barren Islands and into Shelikof Strait. More of a variable flow around Kodiak Island, 10 knots there. By Wednesday, the winds pick up just a little bit more, 15 to 20 knots or so. More of an east and northeasterly flow across north and western parts of the Gulf. 20 knots inside Prince William Sound with a 3-foot sea. Outside, you're looking at 6 to 8-foot seas all the way down toward Kodiak Island. For the Alaska Peninsula, a south and southeasterly wind comes in at 15 to 20 knots with 8 to 10-foot seas on the Pacific side, 3 to 5-foot seas there in the Bering side, 20 to 25-knot winds, still blowing more of that warmth farther northward up the coastline, so that will have more effects on the ice. The winds become a little more variable and light on Wednesday, 10 knots, more of an easterly wind inside Bristol Bay, but even that's light and the seas pretty flat. 8 to 11-foot seas in the Pacific. Some of that flow may be a little more variable with time south and west of Kodiak Island out toward Chignik. Across the Aleutians, a broad west and southwesterly flow pretty much parallel to the chain. 20 to 30-knot winds there as you get into the central and eastern part of the chain. 10-foot seas there on the north side. The Pacific side looking at 15 to 17-foot seas on Tuesday. By Wednesday, seas are diminishing. The winds are settling down a little bit, more of a 15 to 25-knot wind across the central and eastern chain on the Bering side. The Pacific side still looking at 15 to 25 knots. Also on the order of about 9 to 10 foot seas there on the Pacific side. West and southwesterly winds still holding off for now. You get more of a northwesterly flow out around Shemya. Those seas running around 10 feet or so. Again, 30 knot winds for Wednesday. A southeasterly flow working all the way up towards St. Lawrence Island on Tuesday over Nunivak Island, Kuskokwim Bay, Pribilovs, St. Matthew. Looking at 25 knots there. Seas 5 feet, 8 feet around the Pribilovs, 6 foot seas around around St. Matthew. And for Tuesday, you'll see a little bit of a change as you get into Wednesday, more of a north and northeasterly wind developing as that low pressure system here is dragging in some colder air. So a little bit of a shift as we get into the midweek. Offshore winds out of Kuskokwim Bay. 3 to 6 foot seas there, 5 foot seas up around St. Matthew. But again, significant changes in the ice in the waters in this map. For Tuesday, a southwesterly flow working up into the Chukchi seacoast. I'm still looking at ice around all of the Arctic coastline. 10 knot wind there from Barrow to points eastward. As we get into Wednesday, more of a westerly flow, about 10 knots or so, northerlies from Point Leyte at Cape Lisburne into Kotzebue Sound, 15 to about 20 knots as you get into the midweek across the Arctic coast. Recapping tonight's weather, if you haven't heard by now, a lunar eclipse will occur tonight. The question is, will you have a clear sky? Probably the best chances of having at least some clearing will probably be in the interior. You can see all the way from about Arctic Village down into, well, almost Fairbanks, westward toward Galena and south and west, perhaps getting close to Dillingham, maybe King Salmon. Maybe some areas around Kodiak and south central will have a mostly clear to a partly cloudy sky. The clouds that haven't been with most of south central today will probably start to develop, but it will be hit and miss. Southeast probably has a lot of clouds tonight and maybe hit and miss across the Aleutians. Pribilov's probably looking at a mostly cloudy sky, but from about 10:30 to about 12:30 will be your best opportunity for the positioning of the sun, the earth, and the moon to see that lunar eclipse. And it should make it turn a pretty interesting red color if you've never seen one before. So good luck spotting that. Again, between 10:30 and about 12:30 will be your best astronomical time here in Alaska. As far as the weather goes, more showers tomorrow and probably unsettled weather for the south central and the Gulf Coast as we head into Wednesday. Thanks for watching Alaska Weather. See you tomorrow.
These forecasts are to be used for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating. Alaska Weather is made possible by the following sponsors.
The National Weather Service.
Did you know most wildfires happen in spring? It's because the grass and trees are so dry. Protect your home with what they call a defensible space. Remove spruce trees and tall grass within 15 feet. And move firewood 30 feet away. Clean out yucky rain gutters too. Doing this made our house up to 5 times more likely to survive a wildfire. That's good news for me and Max. Wildfires happen. Be ready. Brought to you by the Anchorage Fire Department.